Just a note that this probably will run a little bit long since this is a longer training. So if you have to hop off at the end, that's okay. This will be recorded, so you can check out the question and answer session later through the recording. Okay, so thanks everybody for joining us today. We're going to talk about PAMF, for the Phragmites Adaptive Management Framework. So this is the PAMF training session where we're going to cover the background of the program, what your participation looks like, and how to carry out our data collection procedures. Just a note, like Ned said, we're going to be recording this presentation today. So if you have to leave and if you want to check out that presentation later, it's going to be up on the PAMF Web Hub, and we'll be able to send out a link to that. I know this is a little bit of a long training, so we'll have a short break in the middle of about 5 minutes. So we just want to take a minute to introduce ourselves. I'll turn my camera on for a second. Hopefully you can see me. I'm Taja Tucker. I'll be leading the training today. I'm an ecologist at the U.S. Geological Survey's Great Lakes Science Center, which is in Ann Arbor. And that's one of the organizations that helped found PAMF. I work more on the back end of the program, mostly analyzing data and writing papers and things like that. Christine, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Christine Duman. I work at the, can you hear me? Is my microphone on? I can't tell. Sorry about that. All right, thanks. Sorry, I'll start over. So I'm a postdoctoral research associate with the University of Georgia, but I'm at the Great Lakes Science Center as well. And my role on PAMF is to write and maintain the computational model that takes in all of your reports and spits out guidance every year.
Patrick, you're on mute.
Thanks, Taja, for catching that. Hi, everyone. I'm Patrick Caniff, an invasive species program specialist at the Great Lakes Commission, and I work with everyone here to help support PAMF and the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative. Thanks. Thanks for joining today.
And I am Ned Willig. I'm also a program specialist at the Great Lakes Commission, helping out on Phragmites, among many other different projects. So great to be here today and talk with you all.
Okay, and I also wanted to introduce one person who isn't here with us today, Samantha Tank, or Sam Tank. She's the PAMF coordinator that many of you have been or will be in contact with. She's going to be the voice that you hear in some of the video recordings that we're going to play throughout, and she typically is the one who leads these trainings. She's currently on leave, but she's going to be back working full-time on PAMF in the coming months. So just wanted to introduce you to our fearless leader. So before we get started, I have a few housekeeping things to cover. If you're not familiar with it, this is the Teams interface. So depending on the version that you have, it might look slightly different than this one. We've got the chat box, it's that little speech bubble, and there's settings at the 3 dots. You can turn on and off your video and mute and unmute, and the big red button is to leave. And if you're having any issues, Patrick and Ned are standing by to help. Like if there's something that you can't figure out and you can't access the chat box or something is going horribly wrong, you feel free to email us at pamf@glc.org, and that email is being monitored. So generally, pre-COVID, these training sessions were really interactive. Unfortunately, our interaction is going to be a little bit more limited today with the remote format, but I wanted to encourage everybody to ask questions if you have them. You can just type them into the chat box as we go along, and we have lots of times to answer those questions throughout the training session. We're also going to have a big Q&A at the end. I'm going to try to stick to our schedule so we can make sure that we cover everything. So if we don't get to your questions during the training, we're going to be doing that afterwards. So if you have to leave at any point, like I said, it'll be recorded, and you can access this on the web hub, and we will send you that link. Also, throughout the presentation, I'm going to ask for some check-in questions just to get people thinking and responding, and also some knowledge checks. So you can enter those responses into the chat as well. So normally we'd hold these trainings in person. We'd get people going out into the field to test out the monitoring techniques, but unfortunately we've got to go this virtual route these days. But this is our second year doing this live remote training, so thanks for everybody for tuning into this and for all your hard work managing Phragmites. So today, first, we're going to give some background on the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative, get into the background of PAMF, and then go over the PAMF participant cycle, which is how you would be getting involved with it. We've broken up all the different parts of the cycle into their own video clips, and I'll be playing those for you today, but those will also be available separate from this recording for easier access if you want to review something later. While we can't cover everything in this short amount of time, we're going to be directing you to a bunch of different resources that are available online to help you out. So I'm assuming that if you are joining us today, you recognize this plant. This is Phragmites australis, subspecies australis, or the invasive common reed. Phragmites is this aggressive wetland invader. It arrived on the east coast of North America, either in the late 1700s or early 1800s from Europe. And you can see in these pictures, it forms these huge monotypic stands, and it has a lot of negative impacts that can disrupt ecosystem services. It can also have impacts on our water, like changing water flow, filling in ponds and ditches, and it also just uses a lot of water. It can have impacts on wildlife, like crowding out habitat for reptiles and amphibians or some wetland bird species. And it can change the way of life for humans as well. It could be a safety hazard, like blocking out signs or views on roadways. Could possibly be a fire hazard when the old dead Phragmites is piling up. And it's just, in some cases, not entirely pleasant to look at. It's blocking lakeside views of cabins. There's one study that even shows that it could decrease housing values. So Phragmites causes a lot of different problems, and any number of those issues might be why you want to manage it. It's obviously not just a problem here in the Great Lakes region. You can see in this map across North America, it's where it's invaded. But it also affects ecosystems internationally throughout the US and Canada. So because Phragmites is just about everywhere around the Great Lakes, we were looking for sort of a regional approach to study and manage it, which led to the creation of the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative, or the GLPC. The GLPC has been around for about a decade now. The collaborative's mission is shown here. It's to facilitate communication among stakeholders across the region and serve as a resource center for information on Phragmites biology, management, and research. So basically all things Phragmites. Since its creation nearly a decade ago, the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative has developed a number of resources, all geared toward meeting the needs of Phragmites managers. This is our website, greatlakesphragmites.net, and it's a one-stop Phragmites resource hub with information on Phragmites identification, research, and management. And although the website is kind of our main resource, we are more than just the website. There's a collaborative network. It's anybody in the Great Lakes who is impacted by or trying to impact Phragmites. So in a sense, all of you are already in the collaborative. We also have over 40 archived webinars with more added every other month or sometimes more frequently, where regional Phragmites experts present their latest research and management findings. The latest research is also shared in our quarterly research roundup. So if you subscribe to our listserv, you can access it that way. You might have also seen us on social media. We have Twitter and Instagram and are launching an Instagram soon. And that's just a way to connect managers and share out all the great work that's happening throughout the Great Lakes. So I would encourage everybody to check out the Collaborative's website when you get a chance. It can be a really great resource. So what we're all here for today at PAMF. So one of the Collaborative's greatest resources is the Phragmites Adaptive Management Framework, or PAMF as we call it, which is what you're here to learn about. And pictured here is our lovely mascot Fraggy. You'll be seeing him throughout. We're going to walk through each of the steps of the PAMF participant cycle, which include all of these 5 steps here on these little puzzle pieces. So first, it is enrolling a management unit, which is just a patch of Phragmites that you might want to manage, and then monitoring annually, submitting data to the model, which then provides each management unit with effective and efficient management guidance, which is then implemented throughout the year through management actions. And this is an iterative process, so it happens again every year, and it starts over the next year with the next round of annual monitoring. Just to note that the participant cycle takes place over the course of a year, but it doesn't actually line up with the calendar year. So all of the concepts that we're going to cover today can be found in this PAMF participant guide. There's a picture of that on the left. And that's available on our web hub. I've posted the link to that here, www.pamfportal.net. And occasionally there are firewall issues if you're trying to connect from like a federal or state computer, which you can use the second link at ismtrack.org. And this is also in the participant guide. So we'll talk about enrolling in a bit in the web hub. So we're going to start off with an introductory video that will give you a little bit of background on PAMF. All of these recordings are available separately from the full recorded training. They're on the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative's YouTube account, and there are links on the resources page of the PAMF web hub. So I'm going to play that first video now, and if somebody could let me know if the sound is working, that would be great.
Hello, and thank you for your interest in the Phragmites Adaptive Management Framework, or PAMF. This short video is meant to give you an understanding of the why behind its creation. A number of traditional methods are used to control Phragmites. Some of these include herbicide applications, mechanical removals, prescribed burns, and hydrologic manipulations, just to name a few. One thing that all of these techniques have in common is that they're resource intensive, requiring special knowledge, equipment, staff time, and funding. However, Phragmites managers are not seeing consistent results when implementing these techniques. For example, an herbicide treatment applied in Michigan may have a very different outcome than one applied similarly in Minnesota. A lot of uncertainty exists surrounding which variables, such as site conditions and implementation techniques, are responsible for such variability in the treatment effectiveness. And when a manager does find a highly effective management technique, there's currently no mechanism in place for sharing that knowledge with other managers. Even our regional Phragmites experts are struggling with the uncertainty of treatment outcomes. During the initial planning phase for PAMF, experts were elicited to help provide base values for the PAMF model. Part of this elicitation involved giving each of the 9 experts a hypothetical management scenario. So in this case, you applied a glyphosate treatment to a Phragmites stand that was 80% established with non-native Phragmites, and then asked them to predict the most likely outcomes by distributing 100 points. If there was high agreement between experts, then we would expect to see a lot of overlap in the distribution of points. Expert 1 anticipated improvement in the invasion status with a reduction in the percent establishment of Phragmites at this site, most likely between 41 and 50%. Expert 2 expected even lower establishment. Even better expectations from Expert 3, who predicted eradication was even possible. Expert 4 still predicted a lot of improvement. Expert 5 believed pretty similar to Expert 4. Expert 6 predicted there would be no change in the invasion state after 1 year of treatment. Expert 7 predicted some improvements. Expert 8 thought it was likely that the invasion would even get worse. And Expert 9 believed a large reduction in Phragmites was likely. So remember how I said that a lot of overlap in responses would indicate expert agreement? Well, that's not what we saw. Even the experts disagree on what would happen. This result was interesting to us and reflected the uncertainty that we were seeing in Phragmites treatment outcomes throughout the region. It was becoming more clear that we needed some sort of systematic collective learning to address this type of uncertainty. Going back to 2015, the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative surveyed Phragmites managers, asking them about their interest in tools, such as mapping tools, scalable monitoring and statistical protocols, decision support tools, and online databases to store project information. The responses showed a lot of interest in all of the proposed tools. And the collaborative wanted to find a way to reduce uncertainty and in a way that would incorporate the tools that managers had identified wanting. Utilizing an adaptive management approach in the design of PAMF would allow us to systematically learn from our management outcomes in a way that would avoid the trial and error approach to management that was becoming all too common. When correctly implemented, adaptive management results in systematic learning, reduced uncertainty of management outcomes, less waste of resources, and improved overall effectiveness of Phragmites management. Thus, the Phragmites Adaptive Management was formed to address the needs of Phragmites managers from across the Great Lakes Basin and also incorporate the tools that managers had identified wanting. At PAMF, our mission is to find the best strategies for managing invasive Phragmites in the Great Lakes Basin. The benefits of PAMF include basin-wide learning, systematic learning for management outcomes, and site-specific data-driven guidance that we're able to provide as a result. PAMF wouldn't be possible without the dedication of professionals from across the Great Lakes Basin. PAMF's core team includes staff from the University of Georgia, the U.S. Geological Survey, and the Great Lakes Commission. We also have a technical working group that assisted with the creation of PAMF and represents a binational cross-section of Phragmites experts. And finally, the stakeholders. PAMF exists as a resource for Phragmites managers and will only continue to exist and improve with continued engagement. Anyone in the Great Lakes region can participate in PAMF, from private landowners to federal agencies. PAMF is open to anyone regardless of experience. Now that you understand a little more about why PAMF exists, you can start exploring what it means to be a participant. Here's a representation of what the adaptive management framework looks like as part of the participant process. Participants work through these steps, which repeat on an iterative cycle. And when you add a timeline to those steps, you end up with the PAMF participant cycle.
Okay, so that was just a short overview of the background of PAMF. And now that you've had that, here's a status update of the last cycle, so the one that took place during 2019-2020. At the end of the last cycle, PAMF had 43 managers with 133 management units that were actively engaged in the program. You can see on this map the distribution of the sites. There were 502 acres or 203 hectares enrolled in PAMF, but the average management unit is pretty small. The average size is about 4 acres, although most are about under 1 acre. And in 2020, we were able to provide management guidance to 111 management units who had monitored that July. In total, we've had over 220 MUs enrolled since PAMF started in 2017. So let's practice using the chat box. Could you briefly tell us how you heard about PAMF? This is how people have heard about it in the past. So I'm just curious if there are many differences. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of the website, through the SYSMAs, University of Wisconsin, Green Bay, PAMF staff, more SYSMAs. The listserv. Awesome, thanks everybody. It's good to get an idea of where you heard about us. So before we tackle the details of how the program works, I wanted to point out some reasons why it's a great idea to participate in PAMF. There are several direct benefits to you, including you receive site-specific management guidance, and it gives you a way to keep track of your management efforts. You can store your data and your photos in the PAMF database. We also provide you with yearly reports for each one of your enrolled sites that shows their progress over time, which are great reports or things to share with funders or other people who are interested in your management. There are also benefits to others through this collective learning process that we'll talk about. Your data is going beyond just your patches of Phragmites and helping us learn which management techniques and timing of those techniques work best across the Great Lakes. Eventually, this will lead to the creation of best management practices from everything that we learn. And all of this comes at a pretty low time commitment of 3 to 5 hours per year on average, excluding this training. Although that time estimate could be more or less depending on the number of management units you have and their size. So before we get into the participant cycle, I want to take a pause and see if there are any questions. Does anybody have any questions yet?
Hi, Tasha. There's no questions currently, but I would want to ask, where will all participants be able to find the recorded webinar for future use?
So that's going to be up on the PAMF web hub, and we will also send out a link to that to everybody that participated today. Okay, so if there's no questions yet, we'll move on. So our next little short video will cover enrolling a management unit into PAMF, and that's the first step in becoming a PAMF participant.
The first step in the PAMF participant cycle is enrolling a management unit into PAMF. Before you can benefit from the collective learning process, you must first enroll your management unit into PAMF. Enrollment is covered in Chapter 1 of the PAMF Participant Guide, which can be downloaded from the PAMF web hub. This gear figure represents the PAMF participant cycle, with enrollment shown in the outer blue ring. The PAMF cycle runs from August 1st to July 31st of each year. Enrollment can happen anytime during the year, with most participants enrolling sometime in the spring before the start of the next cycle. So what is a management unit? A management unit is simply the area in which you're planning to manage Phragmites in a uniform way. Once you enroll a management unit into PAMF, the boundaries are unchanging through time, even though the distribution of Phragmites within the unit may change. Enrolling a management unit has two steps: establishing the boundaries and filling out the enrollment questionnaire. All enrollment data is submitted to the central database on the PAMF web hub, which can be accessed by visiting www.pamfportal.net. The best way to establish your management unit boundaries is by using a GPS device and walking the perimeter of your selected management unit. The PAMF Participant Guide has instructions for how to do this using a smartphone and the View Ranger app. However, there's many different ways to generate a GPX file that can be uploaded to the PAMF web hub. Once you have the file uploaded to the web hub, it will display in a similar way to the management unit displayed in this image. It may not be possible for you to generate a GPX file, and that's okay. Another option is to draw the boundary on the map interface that is built into the web hub. The drawback to this approach is that we're utilizing Google Earth, and the map of your area may be dated or from a season where Phragmites isn't growing, making it difficult to accurately establish your boundaries. We still encourage you to visit your prospective management unit prior to using the map interface tools, so you have a better idea of where you're going to be actively managing Phragmites. Participants are encouraged to upload pictures to the web hub when they enroll their management unit. Pictures can help you keep track of your management unit boundaries and give you pictures from before managing for reference. After enrolling your boundary, you'll answer a series of questions on the web hub that tell us about the management unit, its history, site characteristics, and your management limitations. We want to understand your management limitations because we don't want to recommend a management action that you don't have the ability to implement, like flooding if you can't control the water levels within your management unit. You can change your responses to the management capabilities portion at any time by just going onto the PAMF web hub and editing the original enrollment questionnaire. I do want to highlight a few questions in the enrollment questionnaire regarding gradients, because they're particularly important for determining the appropriate orientation of your monitoring transects and locations. First, check your unit for a stem density gradient, where the density of Phragmites decreases from one area of the management unit to another. Be sure to note the cardinal direction of the gradient if one is present. In this figure, both units have a stem density gradient running from west to east or east to west. They're considered equivalent for the purposes of reporting. If no stem density gradient is found, check for a hydrologic gradient, where a clear transition occurs from drier to wetter soils, or even standing water. If a hydrologic gradient exists, note its cardinal direction. Both units in this figure display a hydrologic gradient running from east to west or west to east. If neither a stem density nor hydrologic gradient exists, you'll be prompted to report the direction of the longest possible transect. Ultimately, all of this information is used to inform the placement of the monitoring locations that will be randomly generated by the web hub each year when you go out to monitor in July, so that the data you collect are representative of the management unit as a whole. After enrolling your management unit on the PAMF web hub, you will receive a notification that you have indeed enrolled, but that your transect will not be visible until it is reviewed and approved by the PAMF staff. We built in this review process because situations had arose where transects were falling outside of the management units, leaving participants with monitoring locations that were also outside of the management unit boundaries. Phragmites doesn't grow in a straight line, so we can't expect your management unit to be a uniform shape either. The PAMF staff will review each of the transects suggested by the web hub and redraw them manually if necessary. This process is pretty quick on our end and typically should be done the same day you enroll, but no longer than 2 business days after enrollment. If you're hoping to enroll and monitor the same day in July, that's still possible. You can contact us ahead of enrolling and we'll do our best to immediately review the transect so there's no delay. Otherwise, you'll need to use the participant established monitoring locations instructions to establish your 5 quadrat locations. This document can be found in the PAMF web hub. So there are some considerations when deciding which management units to enroll in PAMF, and I want to just spend a little bit of time covering those. First, you'll want to consider your ability to manage uniformly throughout a management unit. If you were thinking of applying different management techniques within one area, try to break those up into multiple management units instead. You'll also want to select an area where you're comfortable implementing one management technique at a time. There are also some practical considerations to make before mapping out your management unit. The boundaries are going to remain constant throughout the life of the management unit in PAMF. So you'll want to consider, will you be able to find the boundaries when your Phragmites reduces over time? There's no size restrictions for PAMF management units, but choosing a site that is too large or too small may lead to some challenges when it comes time to monitor. When possible, enroll management units that are greater than 10 meters wide, since most GPS devices are only accurate within 10 meters. This might not be possible, especially if you're working in right-of-ways or similar areas, and that's perfectly fine. You can still enroll, just be careful when it comes time to monitor GPS error. If you're managing a very large area, you may want to consider splitting that larger unit up into multiple smaller units. This can help with accessibility issues that come with trying to monitor a really large area. And finally, if you're managing one large stand or many smaller stands, you can consider enrolling just a portion of the total area into a few multiple management units. And you can then apply the guidance you receive for those multiple units out more broadly to similar areas. So now you're ready to enroll your first management unit into PAMF. Remember, management units can be enrolled any time of year. Each management unit is only enrolled once, but you can enroll new management units each year. You're encouraged to update your enrollment information on the PAMF web hub should any of your management restrictions change. Although most of the enrollment process is done online, you should still plan to visit the site you're planning to enroll, even if you choose to use the mapping interface to establish your boundaries. The boundaries of your management unit will remain the same throughout its life in PAMF. If you run into any trouble while you're trying to enroll, there are quick guides and other resources available on the PAMF web hub. And of course, the PAMF staff is always ready and willing to help. You can reach us at pamf@glc.org.
Okay. So I'm just going to do a quick review of what we just heard. So number 1, for enrollment, you're going to register for an account on the web hub at pamf-portal.net, and that requires making an account with EdMaps, which is fairly simple. It'll walk you through how to do that. Next, you'll create your management unit by drawing the boundaries either on site with a view ranger or another GPS-capable methodology like an actual GPS, or you can just draw it online within the web hub through the Google Maps interface. And you want to base that unit on what you can feasibly treat with one method at a time. And if you're managing a lot of sites or have huge areas of land, you can just make an MU with a small representative patch as opposed to enrolling a huge site. Lastly, you'll fill out the questionnaire on the web hub, which you can also print out from the participant guide if you want to look at it first before entering the data online. You'll note any gradients in Phragmites presence or hydrology. You'll report on any past herbicide use, and note the presence of Phragmites outside the management unit boundaries, and report on any restrictions to possible management techniques, like say, for instance, you can't use any sort of herbicide. If you're going to, like Sam mentioned, if you're going to register your unit and monitor on the same day, which a lot of people do if you're just getting started in July, make sure to shoot us an email, and we'll approve that management unit ASAP. We're happy to do that. So there's plenty of resources to help you out on the resources tab in the web hub. There's the enrollment quick guide, enrollment questionnaire, and there's also the, how to enroll a management unit video, which I'm actually going to play next. Chapter 1 of the participant guide covers this, and we are definitely happy to help at any time. So now we'll watch that enroll a management unit video I just mentioned. It'll show you a bit about how this works in the field.
Welcome to the PAMF How-To video series. I'm Samantha, the PAMF coordinator. In this video, you're going to learn how to enroll a management unit into PAMF. Be sure to check out the web hub for additional resources such as the participant guide, quick guides, and instructionnaires, which will tell you what your role is as the PAMF participant. First, map the perimeter of your management unit using a GPS device. If you have a smartphone or tablet with wireless capabilities, the ViewRanger app is free and works well for this purpose on both Apple and Android devices, and even allows data collection while offline should you find yourself in a remote area. For detailed instructions on how to use the ViewRanger app to enroll a management unit, check out the instructions in Appendix A of the PAMF Participant Guide located on the web hub. Record the perimeter of your management unit with your GPS device as you walk or drive around your management unit. Make sure to only map the perimeter of the area in which you plan to actively monitor and manage Phragmites. We recommend flagging your starting point so you know where to stop to complete your management polygon. Next, you'll complete the enrollment questionnaire. Start by checking for a stem density gradient, where Phragmites is more dense in one area of the management unit than others. If you notice a stem density gradient, record the cardinal direction. If no stem density gradient is apparent, look for a hydrologic gradient. This really means that there is a noticeable transition from drier to wetter soils, or even standing water. And again, note the cardinal direction. If there's neither a stem density nor hydrologic gradient, just record the cardinal direction of the longest transect running through your management unit. You'll also need to take note of your management unit's hydrologic regime. Does the entire site contain standing water for the majority of the year? Is there not typically standing water, but the soil is usually wet throughout the year? Or is the site fairly dry year-round? Now take note of your management unit's habitat type. Select all the options that seem appropriate given your knowledge of the management unit. Options include wetlands, agricultural lands, roadways and ditches, ponds, and many more. Lastly, look for Phragmites that is established outside the perimeters of your management unit. If there's Phragmites immediately outside of your management unit borders, it could spread back into your site even if your management is effective. So we want to make sure we capture that in your enrollment paperwork. Don't forget to document the state of your management unit as well as the surrounding area. These pictures are going to be useful to you in the future when you complete your monitoring reports.
Okay. So this is a question that came up in last year's training. So sometimes MUs can have sort of strange shapes that aren't easy for people to map. For example, say you have a ring of Phragmites around a pond like this. So if you try to map out that perimeter with your GPS or your phone, you might end up with two circles that kind of look like this. One that covers up the pond for the inside perimeter and one on the outside. But really you want that donut shape. So just let us know via email and we'll correct the shape for you if you need to get just the donut like that. It's also possible to make sort of strange overlapping lines at the beginning or end of your MU with a GPS or your phone. So if there's like a big blob of points, we can remove that as well if you request it. All right, time for our first knowledge check. So true or false, it is important to still visit your prospective management unit even prior to drawing your boundaries using the WebHub's mapping interface tool. So if you want to enter in the chat, true or false. I'm seeing a lot of trues. Good, yes, it is true. And the main reason is because if you're, for instance, using Google Earth to map out your boundaries through the WebHub's tool, it could be several years out of date. So you definitely want to get out there and make sure that's, that you know what the management looks like in the current state of time. All right, another knowledge check back to back. So this one might be a little bit trickier. So there is no hydrologic or stem gradient in this MEU. Which direction should the monitoring transect go? North-south, east-west, northwest, southeast, or northeast-southwest? So I'm seeing a few Ds, and this is really could go either way. And I think the idea that it could go northeast, southwest could work if it was a case where we had drawn the boundary like Sam had shown in the one video, like it could kind of curve around. And then in that case, it would be northeast, southwest, which I think would work. But she has put north and south. It kind of looks like the longest part of this transect. But really, there's no right answer to this one because this is a really oddly shaped unit. So yeah, the WebHub will draw a line for you, but if it falls outside the MEU or if it looks strange, we will check that and fix it. So any questions about enrollment this far?
All right. Put any questions that you may have in the chat. In the meantime, we do have some commonly asked questions too for enrollment. If the Phragmites has been managed in the past, can I still enroll it through the PAMF program?
Yes, you can definitely do that. There is a spot in the enrollment questionnaire where it asks if there's been past management or past herbicide use, and you can note that.
Additionally, is there a size limit for enrolling a management unit?
Nope, you can enroll any size management unit. It has to be one that you can feasibly manage all at once using one technique. And you can make a very small one as long as you know the exact boundaries. And you can deal with the GPS error.
Thanks, Sasha. Yeah, there's a question in the chat at this point from Emily. If you saw a population in an area before, but now it's gone by flooding potentially, should you still enroll it? It's a question.
Yeah, I mean, Phragmites is really good at popping back, as probably most of us know. So you could still enroll it if you wanted to, if you wanted to monitor that stand year after year. Oh, but it might have been a different plant or breed. In that case, you might want to just wait and see. Yeah, that's kind of a tricky one.
All right, do we have any other questions?
Okay, I'll move on to monitoring now. So we're going to play another short video about monitoring.
The second step in the PAMF participant cycle is monitoring a management unit. Monitoring is an important element of PAMF, and as a PAMF participant, you agree to monitor once per year in July. You are asked to follow a standardized monitoring protocol within each management unit enrolled in PAMF, making sure to upload the data you collect to the web hub by August 1st so it can be used to inform the management guidance you receive in mid-August. We recommend monitoring 1 month after implementing any management action during the growing season, which typically means data should be collected in mid to late July. The goal with monitoring is to accurately capture the state of Phragmites infestation within your management unit so that PAMF's predictive model can give you the most relevant management guidance. Monitoring is covered in Chapter 2 of the PAMF Participant Guide. There are a few pieces of equipment you'll need in order to monitor: a printed field sheet and a pencil, a GPS device, a 1/4 meter squared quadrat, and vernier calipers. All of the monitoring supplies you need, minus the GPS capable device, are included in the PAMF kit that is available for free to all participants upon request. To request a PAMF kit, just send an email with your mailing address to pamf@glc.org. Data can also be entered in the field on a wireless device. However, there's no way to save on the mobile version of the website, so if you don't think you're going to have consistent cellular coverage, it will be best to record your data on a printed data sheet and enter it on the web hub at a later time. In order to monitor, you'll need to become familiar with the field sheet, a customized version of which can be printed from the web hub. Monitoring is done in 2 stages. First, look at the management unit as a whole and observe the percent establishment and see whether Phragmites has spread outside of your management unit boundaries. Then collect data on the stem count, stem diameter, and check for signs of stress within the quadrats at 5 different monitoring locations. To determine percent establishment, look at your management unit as a whole and estimate the extent to which live Phragmites exist throughout. Response options are 0 to 10%, 11 to 50%, and 51 to 100%. Although these categories might seem random, they were determined by the PAMF's technical working group. And they did so through an exercise that involved identifying important threshold levels of infestation. For this part of the data collection, the stem density doesn't matter. We're only interested in the percent of land on which Phragmites grows on your management unit. The image on the left shows 2 management units, both which have 51 to 100% establishment, because Phragmites is present throughout the majority of both units, even though their stem density is quite different. Once you have determined the percent establishment, look around the borders of your management unit. Has there been any spread of Phragmites outside of those boundaries? The amount of Phragmites inside your management unit may diminish due to management activities, but if it's expanding beyond the boundaries of your management unit, we'd like to know. The image above shows Phragmites biomass on the ground within the management unit after having been treated. But if Phragmites occurs immediately outside the management unit boundaries where it hasn't been present before, as shown in the photo, that would be considered spread and should be noted on the monitoring form. This question about spread is only required for participants after the 1st year of management. If you don't recall where the boundaries of your management unit are, we suggest downloading your GPX file from the web hub and using your GPS device to retrace the steps. Next, you'll go to the individual monitoring locations within your management unit. Monitoring locations are the spots at which you will place the quadrat and perform the standardized monitoring protocol. When you enroll a management unit on the PAMF web hub, you answer questions to help inform the position of the monitoring transect based on gradients and the geometry of your unit. The web hub gives 5 randomly generated monitoring locations each year, and that's going to be the locations and where you place the transects. You can see them as the red pins in the image. We call these the web hub established locations. Be sure to take note of these coordinates on your printed form or have them ready to view on your wireless device before going out into the field, because at your management unit, you'll use your GPS device to navigate to each location. If one of the suggested monitoring locations doesn't contain live Phragmites or is for some reason outside of your management unit boundaries, or if you lose signal on your GPS device and you can't navigate to the web hub provided locations, please use the Participant Established Monitoring Locations flowchart, which is available on the PAMF Web Hub to navigate to new random monitoring locations. As you approach one of the 5 monitoring locations, you will need to decide where to place the quadrat. Monitoring locations are randomly generated, but there's still the potential for bias if participants are intentionally selecting the best looking Phragmites stems to place the quadrats around. So to avoid any potential bias, we've established protocols on placing the quadrat. As you approach the monitoring location, have your quadrat built on 3 sides. If you build the 4th side too soon, you won't be able to get it over the top of the Phragmites stems. When you've arrived at your monitoring location, toss the quadrat into the Phragmites immediately in front of you while you're facing the same direction you did as you approached. The quadrat is unlikely to fall nicely to the ground, so instead move it to the ground and add the 4th side. Once you pull out any Phragmites stems that aren't rooted within the quadrat, you're ready to take your measurements. For stem count, set up your quadrat at one of your monitoring locations and count all of the live Phragmites stems within the quadrat. Be sure to look out and avoid any potential lookalike species and count only the live Phragmites stems. Also avoid any dead stems from previous years. If you have a really high stem count, so 60 or more, there's a chance that you might have counted some non-Phragmites stems. It's always best practice to do a second count or to have 2 people count at each quadrat. Generally, you'll probably find 8 to 15 live stems in a well-established stand with lots of standing dead biomass, but there's lots of variation, and even if you get a high stem count, it doesn't mean you've necessarily done something wrong. Next, measure the stem diameter at that same location, so don't move the quadrat. Take 3 stem diameter measurements from each quadrat using the vernier calipers. In another attempt to avoid bias, we have some guidelines on how to select which stems to measure. When you build the quadrat, you'll notice that there are 2 black corners and 2 white corners. Build the quadrat so that those corners are opposite one another. When selecting 3 stems to measure, choose the stems closest to each of the opposite black corners, and then the stem that's closest to the middle. It's unlikely that the Phragmites is going to grow really nice and uniform throughout the management unit, so just do your best to figure out which stems are closest to the corners and closest to the middle. This is going to help you avoid any potential bias. If there are less than 3 stems in the quadrat, you only need to measure the 1 or 2 stems that are present. To measure a stem, grip the stem with the lower grip of the calipers as close to the soil as possible. To read the calipers, find the last number on the main scale before the 0 hash mark on the vernier calipers. Record the main scale's number as the stem diameter in millimeters. Additional instructions for how to use the vernier calipers can be found in the appendix of the PAMF participant guide. So you can see the 0 hash mark is lining up with the 12, so stem diameter on the screen is 12 millimeters. Lastly, within your quadrat, before you move it, look for any signs of stress that are not caused by your management actions. This would include environmental stress, such as things like wind damage, as seen in the image on the left, pathogen or fungal stress, which can appear as dark spots along the leaves, like the image in the middle, or stress from insects, such as clear signs of herbivory on the leaves, as shown as in the image on the right. If you think your Phragmites is stressed, but you're unsure, you can select uncertain on the Web Hub and upload a picture, and we can make that determination for you. Take pictures of your management unit just beyond signs of stress, and that will help you keep track of where the boundaries are relative to the change in vegetation. After completing those steps, you've successfully monitored your management unit. For the average management unit, it will take around 1 to 2 hours to monitor, depending on the size and the time it takes to walk between those 5 monitoring locations. I wanted to spend a minute and walk through one of the most frequently asked questions of monitoring. Why does every quadrat need Phragmites? So situations arise during monitoring where quadrats don't have any live Phragmites stems in them. In this case, we don't want you to report zeros if there are other locations within the management unit that have live stems that can be measured. In the management unit image, 2 out of 3 of the monitoring locations has live Phragmites stems. However, instead of reporting zeros for monitoring location C, it should be moved to another location where live stems are growing and that doesn't overlap with one of the other two quadrats. Well, let's explore this question a little bit further because I'm sure some of you are now asking, aren't I creating bias by moving my quadrat to a new location within the management unit if there's no Phragmites growing at my Web Hub established monitoring locations? So to help answer those questions, I want to walk through a quick scenario. Imagine this is your management unit and that the yellow coloring represents live Phragmites stems. You have observed that your Phragmites, that your management unit has 51 to 100% establishment of Phragmites. So most of it's established. The first year you monitor, all of the monitoring locations fall nicely within the live Phragmites stems. But you continue on with PAMF, and you have a really great, successful year. Your treatment's effective, and the amount of Phragmites in your management unit begins to decline. The next July, you come back and you monitor, and you only have a couple of patchy stands of Phragmites left in your unit. This is great news because this is the goal. We don't want Phragmites. We want to get rid of it from your unit. But now your new set of monitoring locations doesn't fall within the live Phragmites stems that are left. Instead of reporting zeros for the 3 monitoring locations that are outside of the Phragmites patches, you would need to establish new random locations for those 3 quadrats using the participant established guide that's available on the Web Hub. Now, all 5 of your quadrats have live Phragmites stems. To understand why you're not biasing your monitoring data, you need to understand the distinction between percent establishment and stem density, which are the 2 measures that the model is looking at to understand the Phragmites infestation within your unit. By assessing the percent establishment, you are telling the model how much of your management unit is infested. The quadrat measurements are then looking to describe the health of the remaining Phragmites. So by leaving quadrat measurements blank, you would be giving the model less information to work with. Percent establishment is telling us how much, and the stem density is describing the health. So those 2 are different. Zeros are acceptable for stem density or for stem counts when there are so few Phragmites stems that you're not able to fit all 5 quadrats within your management unit without those quadrats overlapping. If you do need to establish your own monitoring locations, like I've mentioned, there's a resource available on the PAMF Web Hub. You can establish your own locations by following the instructions on the participant established monitoring locations guide. This document gives you step-by-step instructions that will help you navigate to new random selected locations. So as a reminder, monitoring occurs annually in July, and all reports, including your monitoring report, are due each year by August 1st. You're able to request a PAMF kit by emailing the PAMF coordinator at pamf@glc.org. Monitoring data that you collect is used by the PAMF model to understand the invasion status. Thus, it's important to ensure that all of your monitoring locations have live Phragmites stems. Monitoring isn't always easy, and we know this. We've done it, but we have resources available on the PAMF Web Hub to help. And of course, PAMF staff is always available to answer questions and provide support.
So a quick review of what we just saw. We ask you to monitor at least 1 month after your last management action. So say you mowed all of the Phragmites on June 5th, then we ask you to monitor after July 5th. And there are 2 steps to monitoring. At each monitoring location, you're going to count the number of live Phragmites stems in the quadrat. You're going to take those 3 stem diameter measurements with the calipers. You're going to assess Phragmites for signs of stress visually, and then you'll repeat that protocol for all 5 monitoring locations. And secondly, you're going to estimate the percent establishment of the MU overall, and the monitoring reports are due August 1st. So there are resources for this, like Sam mentioned in the video, under the resources tab on the web hub. There's a quick guide to monitoring and instructions. So that's really helpful if you need a refresher on what to do. There's a monitoring field sheet that you can print out. It'll have the GPS locations that you need. It's just really handy in the field. And especially if you don't have like cell coverage and you can't use the web hub to enter your data directly. And then chapter 2 of the PAMF participant guide covers everything about monitoring. And again, PAMF staff are here to help. So please reach out to us if you need it. Okay. So again, now we have another little video that shows you what this might look like in the field.
In this video, you're going to learn how to conduct the field activities required to submit a monitoring report. But before we do that, make sure that you have an account already set up at pamfportal.net, and then come back and we'll continue. Monitoring for PAMF happens each July, and the corresponding report should be submitted by August 1st. That way, you can receive management guidance by the middle of August each year. Before you head out into the field, make sure that you have all the necessary equipment. You're going to need a piece of paper and a pencil, or you can use a smartphone or some sort of web-capable device. You're also going to need vernier calipers, a 1/4 meter quadrat, and some GPS-capable device. Now that you have all of the necessary equipment, make sure that you write down the WebHub provided coordinates before you head out into the field. First thing you want to do in the field is retrace your management unit boundaries. You can use your enrollment GPX file as a guide. To estimate percent establishment, we've 3'd the unit to gauge the amount of area which Phragmites occurs throughout the unit's boundaries. Remember that stem density doesn't matter, only consider the portion of your management unit that contains live Phragmites. You can report this as either 0 to 10%, 11 to 50%, or 51 to 100% establishment. Depending on how you enrolled your management unit and how you set those boundaries, you may not even start with a management unit that's over 50% established. We suggest that you take photos each time you visit your management unit so you can answer future monitoring questions. Next, you'll navigate to each of the 5 suggested monitoring locations. Coordinates are provided on the web hub under the View Management Unit tab. If a suggested location does not contain any live Phragmites, is outside of your management unit, or you lose GPS signal, please navigate to a new random location. Further instructions for creating a participant established location can be found in the PAMF participant guide. Record your new GPS coordinates if possible. Once you've navigated to your first monitoring location, set up the quadrat, being careful not to place it where you've been walking. If your monitoring sites are underwater, you're still able to monitor at those locations as long as the live stems are present above the water surface. Simply float the quadrat on the water surface to take the measurements. Count the number of live Phragmites stems within the quadrat, including only those that are rooted within it. Make sure not to count other similar-looking grasses. Some stem counts may be as low as 8 or 10, despite the presence of dead biomass, sometimes making stands appear much denser. Next, you'll need to take 3 stem diameter measurements using the vernier calipers. Measure as close to the ground as possible. To minimize bias, measure 2 stems from opposite corners of the quadrat, and then 1 in the middle. The quadrat has 2 opposite colored corners as a reminder. To read the instrument, find the last number on the main scale before the 0 hash mark on the vernier scale. Record the main scale's number as the stem diameter in millimeters. In this case, we would record the stem diameter as 9 millimeters. If your monitoring site is submerged under the water, measure the stem diameters at the water surface. Now assess the Phragmites within the quadrat for signs of stress not associated with your management actions. If the majority of the Phragmites within the quadrat show signs of stress, record that type of stress as either environmental, pathogen, or insect herbivory. If uncertain, report uncertain. We encourage you to take pictures of the signs of stress and upload them along with the monitoring report to the web hub. Environmental stress may include wind damage, drought, or flood-induced stress. Pathogen or fungal stress can appear as dark spots on leaves. Insect herbivory appears as holes in the plant tissue or insects actively eating the plants. Insects simply present on the plant does not necessarily indicate stress. Repeat this protocol for all 5 monitoring locations. Record any unique conditions or characteristics in the notes section of the monitoring report. If you have further questions, please refer to the Resources tab on the web hub, or feel free to contact us at pamf@glc.org. Thanks for participating. You're now ready to submit your first management report. And be sure to check out all of the PAMF how-to videos on the PAMF web hub.
All right, now for a knowledge check. This picture is a little bit tough to see, but what level of Phragmites establishment would you prescribe to this image? 0 to 10%, 11 to 50%, 51 to 100%. And you can type that in the chat box. Okay, it looks like we're seeing a lot of B's, an A, B or C. So we would probably give it 11 to 50%, and it's probably at the lower edge of that range. It's hard to tell from the photos, but there are clearly a lot of stems in the middle here, but a lot of dead stems in the background, and we don't want to count those. You may have said A, but note that the Phragmites is present in many places that are not inundated. So we would recommend taking a walk around your whole plot after you've visited your 5 random locations, because after you've done the quadrat work, you've probably done some like weaving around, and you've got a good perspective of how much Phragmites there is. Dead standing biomass doesn't count, so try to ignore any dead stems. If you have access to recent drone footage, you could also take a look at that to estimate the percent establishment. But yeah, this picture is a little tough to interpret. So any questions on monitoring?
One of our commonly asked questions, Daja, is whether participants return to the same monitoring locations year after year.
Actually, the Web Hub will give you different random monitoring locations each year. And again, like the video said, if those don't work out for you, there are guides on the Web Hub of how to get new monitoring locations that you can just walk to yourself without having to use a GPS.
We have a question from Francine. What are the pathogens that might be present, and do they impact growth?
I don't know if anybody else on the call can chime in on this one, but I know there are fungal pathogens, those black spots that are pretty common on leaves. I'm not positive about the impact on the growth. But it's definitely something that we want to account for when we're looking at this data.
All right, do we have any other questions before we move on? Yeah, we've got a question in chat from Laura. Are sites monitored indefinitely, or do they stop after so many years with no regrowth?
So that's kind of up to you. Obviously, Phragmites is good at popping back, and it could reappear after several years. And we recommend that you keep monitoring the site for several years after it's disappeared, just to make sure that it's gone. But it's kind of up to you at that point. If it's been a few years and you're just reporting no management actions and no Phragmites stems, at that point, it's up to you if you want to stop engaging with the program on that MU. Okay, so we're going to hit that 5-minute break now. Let's see, what time is it? It's 11:20. So I guess we'll start coming back at 11:25. That sounds okay to everybody. We're going to keep moving on. And next, we're going to talk about the PAMF model. So this is one of the most critical parts of the adaptive management program. And the PAMF model is used to facilitate systematic learning and provide guidance to you as a result. So we'll have a short model animation video that we'd like to show you, and then Christine will answer any and all questions you have about the model. So if you want to know more about the technical aspect of PAMF, this is a great opportunity because Christine designed it. All right, so the model video.
Non-native Phragmites australis, or common reed, is invasive in the Great Lakes Basin, and controlling it can be expensive. Because it often isn't clear what management approaches will succeed, many managers are interested in science-based decision support. The Phragmites Adaptive Management Framework, or PAMF, invites Phragmites managers to contribute to and benefit from collective learning. At the core of the program is a mathematical model that weighs the same factors that you might consider when managing Phragmites, trade-offs between efficacy, uncertainty, and cost. It draws on experience and data from participants across the basin to determine the best value guidance for each management unit. Each complete set of reports that you upload to the PAMF Web Hub teaches the model about Phragmites' response to management. Monitoring reports track the severity of each Phragmites invasion through time. Management reports tell the model what was done and how much it cost. Together, these reports show the model how Phragmites in your management unit responded to the actions you carried out. PAMF's model keeps track of what is known about management outcomes by categorizing invasions into 6 states, increasing in severity from 1 to 6. And predicting how likely an invasion is to transition from one state to another after management. Imagine that you have a highly invaded management unit in state 6 and plan to control it using management combination A. Before you take action, the model predicts that your unit is 40% likely to improve to state 4, 20% likely to improve to state 3, and 10% likely to end up in another state. After managing, you see the unit's infestation improve to state 3. The model responds by increasing its prediction that similar units managed the same way will improve to state 3, and reducing predictions that they will transition to any other state. As you and others file reports, you add to the pool of data that informs the model's predictions. Now, suppose you have another combination available. The model predicts that combination B is 40% likely to improve your unit's infestation to state 2, 20% likely to improve it to state 3, and 10% likely to result in another state. Since combination B is more likely to improve your unit to a less invaded state, the model will recommend combination B over combination A, provided that it isn't too expensive. As the model collects data about cost and effectiveness of each of PAMF's 16 combinations, its guidance changes to reflect the best information available. You make this happen. The model is a critical part of the adaptive management process and reduces the uncertainty surrounding Phragmites management throughout the Great Lakes Basin. Your data drive the collective learning process and help reduce the spread of invasive Phragmites.
All right, so based on the video alone, we're going to do a knowledge check before we talk to Christine. So true or false, the model recommends guidance for your management units based only on the information that you provide. Seeing a lot of false. And that's correct. Christine, I'll pass it over to you if you want to talk about this a bit or talk about the PAMF model, and you can ask her any questions.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, so just to elaborate on the answer, it's false. You all got it. That's really great. And the reason for that, which you probably picked up in the video, is that everyone's data contributes to everyone's guidance. And this is where we get the collective learning that we talk about in PAMF. The way that the data are incorporated, they benefit everyone. So once you're enrolling units and filing reports, you're not just helping yourself manage Phragmites, you're helping everybody in the program. And so we're looking forward to you joining and appreciate your contribution. Yeah, so moving on to other questions. Did anyone have any other questions about the model?
Christine, looks like there's no current questions in the chat, but as far as frequently asked questions, it's been noted that there's been several combinations, including flooding, and some sites cannot control their water levels. And so what are these participants supposed to do if the model recommends a flood?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So if you think back to what you do when you fill out your enrollment questionnaire, there are the questions that say, oh, I can't herbicide, I can never herbicide this unit, I can't control the water, I can't flood. I forget, there's a third one, but I forget what it is right now. But if you choose, for example, that you cannot flood your unit, then the model will never recommend flood to you because it takes that into account. And if you were to go back, if you installed a pump and you were like, okay, I can flood it now, then you could go back to your enrollment questionnaire and change it. And then you could start getting flood recommendations if it became something that was available to you.
Thanks, Christine. Additionally, since participants are able to edit their reports, how does it affect the model when one does edit the reports?
So it depends on which reports you're editing. If you're talking about enrollment reports, it would affect the model like I just described. If you said suddenly I can do herbicide or I can't do that anymore, you wouldn't get those recommendations, but that wouldn't affect the data that we collect very much. You can also edit your monitoring reports up until the deadline. And the reason for that is that we want the information that you want to give us as much as up to date as it can be, but also the way the model works, it needs there to be one monitoring report. And if there's more than one, it doesn't have a very easy time deciding which one to choose. So you can update that up until the reporting deadline, and then it gets locked down because we don't want to come back and see different data than the data that we actually used for that year's model run. And because that's just confusing and not reproducible, and we want to be as transparent as we can.
Yeah, and that's why we also have a hard deadline, August 1st, of when to turn in all of your reports so that we can kind of get a snapshot of the data at a certain point in time. And that's what we use to run the model.
Mm-hmm. Does that answer the question? I don't remember. I don't think you can you. I don't know if you can edit management reports, but I think you can. But I don't know.
Yeah, but I believe that's the case.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
again,
so,
up until that deadline.
okay, yeah, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Making changes after the fact is fine as long as it's in the same PAMF cycle. But once the model runs, because we incorporate data in a cumulative way, all of our results depend on all of our past results. So we don't want to have retroactive changes, because then we won't be able to trace back through what the model did anymore.
Thanks, Christine, for walking us through that. In addition, some other interesting questions. So how likely are you to receive drastically different management combinations between years?
I think that's really going to depend on the state of your management unit. So if your state stays about the same, you're more likely to get similar guidance than you did in the past. Although, I mean, that's assuming that there isn't a big influx of data for that and that we have just a huge jump in what we think is the best approach. I mean, you can probably tell by listening to me try and think through this that it's a little bit of a complicated story, and it depends on the state of your management unit, what you're doing, what everybody else is doing. And if it's only you taking that one action, then we're only learning from your data. But if it's everybody taking that action, we're learning a lot more about the action. So it just really depends on the situation, I think.
Yeah, and maybe one more quick thing you could address is how does cost get factored into the model?
Yeah. So like the video touched on, right? We want to recommend efficient actions. So we want them to be effective, but we also don't want to cost you your whole budget. So what we do, yeah, this figure is up. So what we do is we take the matrices that the video talked about, and we balance those against a cost ranking. So the matrices talk about effectiveness, and the cost ranking is just simply a rank of the most expensive management combination to the least expensive one. And that was done in collaboration with a technical work group, I believe, to get that ranking set up. And we put those both into the optimization, which is an algorithm that will balance those two factors. So if there are two management combinations that have a similar effectiveness, but they're very different in cost, you'll always get the less expensive one recommended. But the more expensive one might be near optimal because it is similarly effective, but less efficient for you.
All right, Taja, how are we doing on time?
Well, we're at 11:38, and I think we're going to have to go over the time limit since we started a bit later. So like I said before, if anybody's got to drop off, we'll send you the recording later. And we're also going to have a Q&A at the end. So if anybody has a question that you want answered at any point, plop it in the chat and we will answer it later. But yeah, I guess we'll keep moving on for now.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, Christine, for answering those questions.
Yeah, thank you. And if anyone comes up with any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them at the end of the session.
All right, so moving on to that guidance that comes out of the model. Guidance is obviously one of the most important benefits of participating in PAMF. So the model runs in August, and by mid-August, you will receive management guidance that the model predicts is going to have the greatest effect on the Phragmites in your specific unit for the lowest cost. So I'll play this video on guidance.
The fourth step in the PAMF participant cycle is receiving management guidance. Each August, PAMF participants receive management guidance that is customized to each of the management units they have enrolled in the program. Management guidance is a direct output of the PAMF model and is covered in Chapter 3 of the PAMF Participant Guide. Before we explore the guidance, it's helpful to learn a little bit more about why guidance is structured the way it is. More specifically, why are we basing our guidance around the seasonal growth patterns of Phragmites? Phragmites has 3 biological phases: translocating, dormant, and growing. PAMF uses these 3 phases for planning management actions because different actions work better during each phase. The translocating phase occurs from late summer to mid-fall. The exact timing of this phase changes from year to year and also depends on where you are in the Great Lakes Basin. which is true for all the other phases as well. During this phase, the plant reduces its growth and begins moving or translocating the photosynthetic sugars to the rhizomes below ground. This is an ideal time to apply herbicide because they're more likely to be transported below ground to the rhizomes. You can tell a Phragmites patch is beginning to translocate when the seed heads mature and the translocation is fully underway, when the leaves begin to yellow and the inflorescences look fluffy. The dormant phase is the period from late fall to mid-spring when the above ground stems have died off, as you can see in this picture, and the below ground rhizomes are mostly inactive. Phragmites regrows from rhizomes each year, although the dead stems from past years can remain standing for another couple of seasons. The dormant phase is a good time to clear the old biomass, which can improve the efficiency of next year's management actions. You will know your management unit is in the dormant phase when all of the above ground tissue is brown. The growing phase is the period from late spring through midsummer when the plants are green and actively growing, as shown in the picture on the right. This is a great time to implement management actions like flooding because the emerging shoots are more easily drowned and thus prevented from further growth. You will know the growing phase is starting when you see new shoots emerging and will continue to grow until the flowers develop and mature. PAMF tracks 16 management combinations. Each management combination recommends one management action per biological phase. Annual management guidance specific to each management unit will be provided as one of these potential management combinations. Each management unit will receive the combination that the model has determined is most likely to achieve the greatest reduction in Phragmites at the lowest cost for that particular site. You will receive management guidance annually by mid-August on your webhub account. As a participant, you're encouraged to follow this data-driven management guidance, or at least use another of the 16 PAMF combinations, because those are what our predictive model is designed to learn from. So by using one of our management combinations, you will maximize your contribution to the collective learning process. However, you are free to implement any management actions that you choose, and we just ask that you report those actions on the PAMF webhub. Once you receive your management guidance, it's up to you to implement the management action based on your expertise and best practices. PAMF's role is not to provide guidance on how to do each management action, but rather to facilitate collective learning. However, if you need more instructions on how to implement each management action, there is a management actions details and descriptions document on the PAMF webhub, which describes some techniques and considerations for each management action included in PAMF. Here's an example of the kind of management guidance you can expect to receive. Your guidance will come as one optimal combination and several near optimal combinations. The number of near optimal combinations generally ranges between 0 and 4, depending on what the model predicts is going to be most effective and efficient for your management unit, and based on the restrictions you have set for which type of management actions you have the ability to implement. A history of your guidance from previous cycles, as well as your current management guidance, will be available on the PAMF webhub. Guidance is one of the main benefits to PAMF participants. As a participant, you receive data-driven guidance based on the model's most current understanding of Phragmites management. The guidance you receive in August will come as one optimal combination with several near optimal combinations, and that is going to look like one management action for each of the 3 biological phases of Phragmites. Deciding the best implementation technique is up to each participant. Resources are available to provide additional guidance on the PAMF webhub, and the PAMF staff is always available to answer any guidance-related questions. You can email us at pamf@glc.org.
So one question we get about guidance a lot is, why is PAMF guidance so generalized? So the PAMF model is constrained to these 10 management actions that are shown here, and then certain combinations of those. So the reason why this is so generalized is because experience and resource levels of participants can vary a lot in PAMF. Some people work for federal or state agencies and they have like a dedicated budget to removing Phragmites. But some people have it just growing in their backyard and they want to get rid of it as cheaply as possible. So how you implement these actions is completely up to you. But if you need help, the GLPC has plenty of resources available. There are also model implications for why we keep guidance pretty simple. If there are too many management combinations, that's going to take us a long time to gather enough data to figure out what's working best. However, any extra data that you submit is helpful. If you perform an action that isn't on this list, you could put it in an other category and describe in the notes what you did. Or if you use these actions but they don't make a PAMF combination, you can still submit it. In both cases, that's data that we can use in other types of analyses, but it isn't going to inform the PAMF model itself. So any questions about guidance?
Hi, Taja, we've got a question in the chat from Scott. Are the management guidances informed by province and state considerations? For example, restrictions to using glyphosate over water?
Yeah, good question. So it's not necessarily informed by the province or the state's rulings. However, that's something that you can put in the that enrollment questionnaire. So then you will be getting guidance that will let you put glyphosate over the water.
We have an additional question in the chat from Emily. What combinations have you learned had the most prevalent success thus far?
So I actually have, let's see, our results from last year pulled up. And the thing is kind of like Christine talked about with the model, the more data we get on commonly used management actions, or the more the model is going to be informed by those. So because we've gotten so much data on certain ones, those might be recommended more often. Let me just pull up what we've got. And the guidance does change year to year based on what we've learned. And obviously, it's going to depend on your management restrictions at your specific site, like can you cut underwater or not, or can you use glyphosate? And it's also going to depend on the infestation level. So we give different guidance for different infestation levels. If you've got a ton of Phragmites, you're going to be recommended something different than if you have very little. So just looking at the most common things that were optimal guidance in the last cycle, if you've got a whole bunch of Phragmites on your stand, and if you are able to use herbicides, we recommended using imazapyr rest. But if you have mid-levels of Phragmites establishment, we recommended spading. And like I said, this is all going to depend on what we've learned, your management unit. And so it can be a little bit tricky to say, what is the best thing that we've learned so far?
All right, do we have any other questions from the chat? One of our frequently asked questions is if managers will receive guidance if they don't turn in all of their management reports.
Yeah, so you can receive guidance. All you have to do is turn in a monitoring report. You don't have to turn in management reports to get the guidance. Although turning in the management reports, you're contributing to the model learning.
All right, any last questions before we move on? And Taja, I just want to add that there's a little bit of a window overlapping the presentation at this point.
Yeah, that's the participation information summary. Oops. Okay, I will move on. So in that video, we went over the most common way to obtain guidance. And in the next one, we're going to learn about different types of guidance.
In order to accommodate as many participants as possible, PAMF has created a couple alternative guidance options. Alternative guidance is covered in Chapter 3 of the PAMF Participant Guide. Each August, PAMF participants receive effective and efficient Phragmites management guidance, customized for each management unit enrolled in PAMF. This guidance is based on our most updated model learning and the management unit's current site conditions. However, this timeframe may not be ideal for managers that need to make management planning decisions earlier in the year. To provide greater flexibility to using PAMF guidance to inform decision-making, PAMF is now offering 2 new options in addition to August guidance. The first being requesting mid-cycle forecasting guidance, and the second, implementing guidance after a lag year. While we're pleased to be able to offer these additional options, it is important to note that not all guidance is created equal. PAMF August guidance is based on the most up-to-date understanding of Phragmites management outcomes at the beginning of the subsequent cycle. This is the best option and should be implemented whenever possible. The next best option is requesting mid-cycle forecasting guidance, which anticipates in February what August optimal guidance might be. While mid-cycle forecasting guidance has more uncertainty than August guidance regarding the effectiveness of management actions, it incorporates more information than the third option, lag year guidance. Lag year guidance is simply the previous cycle's guidance applied to the next cycle, and should only be considered if you require more than 6 months of planning to implement PAMF guidance. Participants needing to utilize mid-cycle forecasting guidance or lag year guidance will continue to receive the best predictive guidance in August. If you do not anticipate being able to implement your August guidance due to timing and planning constraints, then requesting mid-cycle forecasting guidance is your next best option. Under this option, you can request a forecast of your next round of management guidance in February of each year. Management units are eligible to receive mid-cycle forecasting guidance if they were monitored the previous July and are currently being managed according to one of the 16 management combinations included in PAMF. Participants can submit mid-cycle forecasting guidance requests for eligible management units on the PAMF Web Hub. Requests must be submitted prior to January 7th in order to receive guidance by February 1st. Mid-cycle forecasting guidance is generated through the same model that provides guidance in August for each year and recommends the management combination that is most likely to be the optimal August guidance. PAMF makes this determination by predicting the chance of the occurrence of each invasion state following your current management actions. The third and least optimal option is to operate on a 1-year delay. To implement lag year guidance, you would need to monitor your management unit in July prior to the start of the next PAMF cycle. For this scenario, we'll refer to that as year 1. Save the August guidance you receive for year 2, and then in year 1, apply a PAMF combination of your choice. So if you applied rest or stressed, then you're most likely to have your management unit be in a similar state in year 2 as it was in year 1. After monitoring in July of year 2, you can carry out the management guidance you received in year 1. Following lag year guidance allows you a full year to plan your management actions, apply for funding, and bid for associated contracts. In order to receive the best management guidance that is specific to your management unit's current state of invasion, we recommend that you implement the guidance you receive in August each year whenever possible. However, when that guidance comes too late, then you can consider the other 2 options that I just previously described. If you have any questions or if you want to discuss the best options for your management unit, please contact us at pamf@glc.org.
So alternative guidance is going to work out really well for you if the August guidance comes too late, whether agency budgeting or staff planning or other reasons. So that might be a good reason why you might want to request this alternative guidance. So quick review of all these different types of guidance. Remember that August guidance is ideal because it's the most up-to-date version of the guidance, and anybody who monitored can receive that guidance. And then there's mid-cycle forecasting guidance, which is the second best alternative to the August guidance. Anybody who monitored the previous year and submits a request for it can receive it. You have to submit that request by January 7th. And there's an option for that right on the homepage for your management unit. So if you have multiple MUs, you're going to have to request it for each one, though. And that request button is going to be available later in the season. Right now, you'll probably just get a little pop-up that says, it's not available right now. And then when will you receive that guidance? You'll get it February 1st. And lastly, lag year guidance is the least ideal way to implement guidance. Anyone who has previous guidance from the last year or from a previous year, the management actions are just postponed 1 full year. Okay, so another checking question. Take a second to think about any limitations you might run into while managing your MU. What type of guidance do you see yourself using? And all answers are great and allow you to participate in PAMF. We're just curious about, what kind of guidance you think might apply to you. Got some August guidances. And it's okay if you don't know yet either. Obviously, your management plans can change over time. Okay, any questions about guidance real quick before we move on?
Yeah, we have got a question in the chat from Emily. As I haven't joined an organization yet or officially marked a site, I'm not really sure. I guess I tried to be regular as much as possible aside from extending. So that was an explanation of her response. As far as requesting mid-cycle guidance, though, a common question we have is whether a participant would get the most up-to-date guidance in August still.
Yeah, so if you request mid-cycle forecasting guidance, you'll still get August guidance as well. So if things change and, for instance, you realize you can implement the August guidance, even though you requested mid-cycle forecasting guidance, you can still go ahead and use that August guidance. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm gonna move on. And this is our last video and our last section about management. And we'll learn how to report on different management actions.
The fifth step in the PAMF participant cycle is managing Phragmites. After enrolling and monitoring your management unit, the PAMF model is able to provide your first round of management guidance. Once the guidance is received, you're able to begin managing. Phragmites management happens throughout the year, with one management action occurring in each biological phase, as shown in the cycle image. Management is covered in Chapter 3 of the PAMF Participant Guide. There are 10 management actions that PAMF's model is designed to learn from, which were exhaustively vetted by the technical working group. We recognize that these are not the only Phragmites management actions out there, but they are some of the most common. They're also the management actions from which PAMF's predictive model is designed to learn. So any recommendations you receive will be comprised of a combination of these 10 actions. Check out the Management Actions Details and Descriptions document on the PAMF Web Hub for more information of these 10 management actions. There are 3 management actions that involve herbicide applications, including glyphosate, imazapyr, and glyphosate plus, which is a combination of glyphosate and imazapyr as the active ingredient. Herbicides must be approved for aquatic use when applying them over water, and be sure that a licensed applicator is always used when applying herbicides. There are other considerations to take when applying herbicides, including the sensitivity of surrounding vegetation, land use, and restoration goals. Additional resources, such as an herbicide concentration quick guide, can be found on the PAMF Web Hub. There are 4 mechanical control management actions included in PAMF. Remove biomass involves removing Phragmites from the management unit manually. This can be achieved by cutting and removing Phragmites or even implementing a controlled burn. Mechanical and leave biomass involves mowing, cutting, or crushing all above ground Phragmites biomass within a management unit and then leaving it on site rather than removing it. Pre-flood clearing is really the same as either of the 2 aforementioned management actions, but can involve either removing or leaving biomass, but always followed with a flood event. Finally, spading is being demonstrated by the woman on the right and involves taking a sharpened shovel or spade and inserting it at the base of the stem at a 90-degree angle, cutting into and damaging the rhizome, and then removing any cut Phragmites from the site. Spading works by cutting off the oxygen supply to the plant and then suffocating the rhizome. Next, we have 2 hydrologic management actions. Cut underwater is defined as cutting Phragmites stems beneath the water level as close to the substrate as possible and at least 1 to 3 feet below the water surface. This can be done by hand using equipment like raspberry cane cutters, as shown in the upper right, or with large amphibious equipment, as shown in the left with the truck saw. A second hydrological management action is a flood. In order for a management action to be classified as a flood in PAMF, water must cover all live Phragmites within the management unit for at least a full month. If a natural flood occurs that meets this criteria for a management action, rather than a controlled or intentional flood, this should still be submitted as a management report. If you've already applied a management action during the same phase a natural flood occurs, you can report both actions but use separate management reports. Lastly, we have rest, when no Phragmites management is done. It might seem like a silly action to recommend on its own, but rest can be an effective action as part of a 3-action combination. It's also useful if you're unable to manage your unit for any reason. You can just report rest as your management action, which still provides us with valuable information because inaction also influences the way that infestation changes over time. These 10 management actions have been grouped into 16 potential combinations that reflect what land managers are already doing. These combinations detail 1 management action for each biological phase. Annual management guidance specific to each management unit will be provided as one of these management combinations. Each management unit will receive the combination that the model determines is the most likely to achieve the greatest reduction in Phragmites at the lowest cost for that particular site. As you carry out these management actions, you'll need to submit a corresponding management report. Each management action that occurs during a phase should be reported. So if you plan to implement more than 1 management action per phase, we recommend that you enroll more than 1 management unit so that each management unit only has 1 management action and 1 management report per phase. However, it's all right to perform a single type of action multiple times during a phase, like spading multiple times during the growing phase. This would still only require 1 management report because only 1 type of action is being performed. However, if more than 1 management action occurs during a single phase, such as perhaps you applied glyphosate and then experienced an unexpected natural flood, you would need to fill out separate management reports for both of those actions. You will need to submit at least 1 management report for each phase, translocating, dormant, and growing, even if you let your management unit rest. The management reports are filled out and submitted on the PAMF Web Hub and ask questions like what management action you implemented, what technique you used when implementing it, and the cost you incurred. Questions are meant to give us enough information to evaluate each management action without it becoming a huge time burden for you. The management reports can be found on the PAMF Web Hub or in the appendix of the PAMF Participant Guide. This image here shows one image of the blank report that you can take out into the field with you that can help you gather the necessary information you need for when you go back and submit the report on the Web Hub. We recommend that you submit your management reports at the end of each management phase while things are still nice and fresh in your mind. However, you can submit all 3 reports at the end of the annual cycle, as long as it's before August 1st of each year. Reporting your management actions is meant to be a simple and quick process that should take less than 15 minutes per report. There are 10 management actions included in PAMF. Each management action has multiple implementation techniques possible, and the decision of how to implement is left up to each participant to decide. The 10 management actions are grouped into 16 management combinations that PAMF's model is designed to learn from. Participants are responsible for submitting 1 management report for each management action they take, which is ideally just 1 per biological phase. If 2 different actions should occur during one phase, for example, a glyphosate treatment followed by a natural flood event, each action requires a separate management report. However, if one action applied multiple times during a phase or is applied multiple times during a phase, so for example, it took multiple days to spade an entire management unit, only 1 report is required for that phase. There are resources available on the PAMF Web Hub to help participants make implementation decisions. And as always, the PAMF staff is available to answer any and all management questions. You can reach us at pamf@glc.org.
Okay, one last quick review. We recommend using only one action type per management unit per biological phase. However, one action can be carried out multiple times to achieve even treatment across the unit. So in the management report, there's a spot where it is going to ask you the number of times the unit was managed during this phase. So if you put 2, it will ask you to put in 2 different dates. If you will be doing 2 different actions during the same phase in the same unit, we ask you to submit 2 separate reports for those. So we recommend using one of the 16 management combinations across the PAMF cycle. If you monitor, you will receive guidance on which combination to use. If the August guidance isn't going to work time-wise, you can use one of the alternative guidance options. So what we need from you is one management report per management unit per phase, which adds up to 3 management reports per cycle. If you didn't perform a management action, or if you were going to do some management action, but then you didn't for some reason, make sure to go ahead and call that a rest action. Doing nothing is still data. All of the management reports and your single monitoring report are due in the Web Hub by August 1st. We will send you plenty of reminders for that, although it's probably best to try and submit your management report soon after you did the management, just so you don't have to sit around and think later like, oh yeah, how much herbicide did I use, or what date did I apply that? Although you can wait until the August 1st deadline. So the rest is up to you. That completes the PAMF participant cycle. Again, there are lots of resources for this on the Web Hub. In the interest of time, I'll keep going, but Chapter 3 of the PAMF participant guide is really going to help you out with management. And just a note that if you're looking through the management reports in the guide, they look really long, don't worry. In the Web Hub, it only asks you specific questions related to your management actions and only selects the questions that you need. So there aren't a whole bunch of extra questions. All right, one quick knowledge check before we go on. I applied glyphosate to a management unit many times during the growing phase. What is the correct way to report my management to PAMF? A, create a new management report every time I applied glyphosate, each detailing the concentrations and volumes used. B, submit just one management report that documents the total volume of glyphosate I used, the concentration I used each time, and how many times I applied it. Or C, submit no report, because I am worried the way I applied many times was not recommended by PAMF and they will not want my data. Seeing lots of B's, and that's correct. You will submit just one report with all of the total volume of herbicide you used and how many times you applied it. So if you do happen to submit multiple reports for the same action during the phase, don't worry about it. The model can account for that through the QA/QC process, and we can combine those reports. And C is incorrect because we want your data no matter what. So I'm going to skip past this for now. Do we have any quick questions about management? If maybe we could, in the interest of time, just skip these for now and go to the end. So participating in PAMF is meant to be easy. That's why we have so many resources to help support your efforts. Definitely check out that participant guide. That's going to have everything you need in it, and we'll tell you how to basically do everything you need to do. There's also a bunch of resources on the Web Hub under the Resources tab. There's videos on how to use all the tools in the PAMF kit, how to use the Web Hub, how to use the View Ranger app. And I just want to note that if there's something you would like to see, but we don't have it yet, please let us know. And as of last year, everybody engaged in PAMF receives this annual management unit summary report. You'll get one of these for every management unit you have enrolled. And it allows you to easily track your progress in the program. It summarizes your enrollment data, your monitoring results, which includes like the stem density and the percent establishment over time. It'll give you summaries of all of your management actions and their costs. And these reports are uploaded to the Web Hub after the guidance goes up in August. So these documents are meant to serve as just an additional resource to assist you in tracking your efforts over time. They can be kept for your organizational records. They could be provided to funders as part of your reporting requirements. There are some additional resources on the Web Hub that will give you details about how to interpret some of the content in these documents. Another resource on the Web Hub is this Who's PAMFing page. So whenever you enroll a management unit into PAMF, you are able to give permission for your management unit to be viewable on this page. And it'll show information about others enrolled in PAMF with their manager's contact information. So this is completely voluntary, but we encourage you to use this feature if you want to find others in your area, if you want to connect with them. You could share experiences or even work together to manage Phragmites. As we wrap up, I want to remind anybody, if you need a PAMF monitoring kit, they are free. Send an email with your mailing address to pamf@glc.org and we will send you one. And that contains the quadrat you need, the calipers, data sheets, all in a cute little PAMF backpack. So if you are ready to join PAMF, which we hope you are if you aren't already, if so, this is a quick overview of everything you need to get started. So the first thing you need to do is create that account on the Web Hub. And enrollment happens at any time of the year. So when you're ready to enroll, you can map out your management unit and fill out the enrollment questionnaire on the Web Hub. All of your enrollment data can be submitted to the PAMF Web Hub by clicking on the Enroll a Management Unit at the top of the homepage. Email us to get your free PAMF kit and set aside a couple hours this July to monitor. Submit your monitoring data on the PAMF Web Hub by August 1st. Then you'll receive that guidance in mid-August. This is what an example of that would look like for 3 different MUs. And now you're ready to start managing. So you can implement one management action during the translocation, growing, and dormant phases of Phragmites. And be sure to submit your management reports on the PAMF Web Hub as soon as you have completed them and no later than August 1st of each year. And then you'll start all over again with monitoring again the next year. So hopefully this training gave you a fairly comprehensive overview of the program, and we really hope that you're ready to join us in the collective learning effort. We've already talked about that. There's a strategic plan that we've developed for PAMF. This is on page 41 of the participant guide. We don't have time to cover this now, but whoops, sorry, I've skipped ahead. This guide was created to kind of check our progress over time in PAMF, and it does this by setting different program-specific goals, objectives, and measures for the next 5 years. So if you or your organization would like to help promote PAMF, contact us. And if you know somebody who couldn't attend this training, or if you have interns or volunteers or staff that you would like to assist you, there's this self-paced online training for PAMF online. This is through the Moodle platform. So there's lots of like little interactive quizzes and ways to test your knowledge. You can sign up for that at pamf.moodlecloud.com or through the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative website. You can also just sign up for it in the future if you want to review certain concepts. One last point of interest, and then we'll be done. So are you employing any of these management actions, these pre-flood clearing plus flood or cut underwater? Or are you in Michigan, Ohio, or in Indiana and employing these? If so, the U.S. Geological Survey and the Fish and Wildlife Service, they're conducting a survey this year, or a study this year, to determine the efficacy of these techniques. And they would like to monitor your sites before and after treatment. And this requires minimal effort on your end. Basically, all you have to do is allow people to visit your site. And you don't have to be participating in PAMF for this either. So if you're interested, please contact Wes Bickford with Phragmites cut to drown as the subject line, and I can get you his info later if needed. So thanks for everybody who stuck around today. Sorry for getting started a bit late. We will stick around and answer any questions that you might have. If you need to leave, again, we'll send out the recording to this, and you can hear the answer to your question.
Hi, Tasha. We do have a question in the chat from Francine. Will PAMF connect with folks if they submit data regarding approaches that are likely ineffective or off-label? Like, for example, the example of someone applying herbicide multiple times in one season.
So no, that is not something that we do. I mean, Sam, who's the coordinator, might answer any questions about, if somebody asks, is this a good idea? But if we, especially a lot of times we get the data all at the end of the year. And so we don't get to monitor exactly like what people are doing throughout the season. And so, yeah, it's not really part of the program to kind of like evaluate what people are doing necessarily. I don't know, Patrick, if you have any more info on that.
Well, I would just say that we do look through the reports for things like notes and make sure that what's in the notes lines up with what's in the rest of the report. And sometimes there will be clarification questions that we have, and you might be contacted for that reason.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nothing
that's
to
true.
add on top of that.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely check for anything that might be incorrect in the data, like Christine said.
Or ambiguous too.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good day, everyone. I'll talk with you soon.
Have a
You
good
too.
one.
See ya.